Welcome back to the deep dive. I have to admit, today's topic has me looking at my Wi-Fi router with a deeper level of suspicion than usual.
Just the router. After today, you might be side-eyeing your phone, your toaster, maybe even the sidewalk outside.
Great, just what I needed. But seriously, we are tackling a massive subject. We're doing a deep dive into a book by Jonathan Hillman called The Digital Silk Road.
Yeah.
And the core premise is that while we've all been watching the news for, trade wars or military posturing soldiers, tanks.
The visible stuff.
Exactly. We've been missing the actual war.
Right. We're so used to thinking of empire in terms of, physical territory, lines on a map. But Hillman argues the real battleground of the 21st century is invisible.
It's the fiber optic cables on the ocean floor.
The satellites in orbit, the code running on the device you're listening to right now.
So we're calling this the network wars.
Exactly. And the central thesis here is something Hillman calls infrastructure as influence.
Which, on the surface, sounds a bit dry, like a city planning meeting or something.
It does. It really does, until you realize what it actually means. The argument is that whoever builds the plumbing of the internet,
The hardware?
the hardware, the towers, the cables, they inevitably control the data that flows through it.
You can't separate the pipes from the water.
Precisely. For a long time, especially in the West, we sort of operated under this assumption that technology was neutral. A cable is just a glass wire. A router is just a box.
It doesn't have a political allegiance.
Right. But Hillman says that is a dangerous fantasy.
That sounds like it.
Because if a state-backed company builds the network, they possess the keys to the castle. They have the potential for a kill switch to shut it down, or a listening post to siphon everything off.
So this isn't just about who has faster internet. This is a geopolitical contest for the nervous system of the planet.
That is the perfect way to put it. It's a clash between, the U.S. model of an open internet and a rising model of digital authoritarianism coming out of China. And to really get it, we have to look at the hardware trap.
This is the historical context the book gets into. Because it wasn't always this way, right? The 20th century was dominated by Western tech.
Oh, absolutely. Think AT&T, Nortel, Lucent. These were the titans that wired the world. But over the last few decades, they stumbled. Nortel went bust.
And into that vacuum.
Stepped Chinese firms, most notably Huawei.
And they didn't just step in, they sprinted.
They did. And now they are the dominant players building 5G and internet infrastructure across the developing world. And Hillman gives us a concrete example of why this matters. It's a story about the African Union headquarters in Ethiopia.
This story is wild. I mean, it sounds like something from a spy novel, but it's real life.
It is. So back in 2012, China essentially gifted a shiny new headquarters to the African Union, a $200 million state-of-the-art building.
A very generous housewarming present?
Indeed. It came fully furnished and, more importantly, fully wired with Huawei equipment. But in 2018, technicians at the AAU started noticing something odd.
The servers were acting up.
They saw that every single night, between midnight and 2:00 a.m., the data usage on the building's servers would spike. The building's empty, everyone's asleep, but the servers are running a marathon.
And where was the data going?
Shanghai. It turned out that for 5 years, the servers were secretly mirroring the African Union's internal data and beaming it back to China.
So the building itself was a bug.
The infrastructure was the spy, but here's the part that I think is crucial to understanding Hillman's point about influence.
Okay.
After they found the leak, after the scandal broke, the African Union signed another deal with Huawei.
That's the part that breaks my brain.
Right.
You catch someone stealing your diary, you don't invite them back to organize your filing cabinet.
You do, if they're the only ones who can fix the cabinet for a price you can afford. This highlights the stickiness of this infrastructure.
Right.
Hillman points out that once you're locked into a vendor's ecosystem, ripping it out is it's exorbitantly expensive. It's a dependency trap.
So even with the security risk, the economics just force their hand.
Exactly, and that dependency gives the builder leverage. But let's zoom out. We've talked about a building. Now we need to talk about the ocean.
The undersea vulnerability.
This is one of my favorite parts of the book because it just dispels such a common myth. When you send an email to Europe, how do you think it gets there?
My brain says, up. Satellites.
Yeah.
Space stuff.
And you're in the majority. But in reality, 95 to 99% of international data travels through subsea fiber optic cables.
Garden hose-sized cables.
Just sitting on the ocean floor, they're the arteries of the global economy.
And Hillman argues these are the new front lines.
They are. And he recounts this one incident in 2015 that really exposes how fragile this system is. He calls it a crease in the internet.
This was the routing issue, right?
Yes. So an internet intelligence analyst named Doug Midori was watching global traffic patterns, and he noticed that data supposed to go from Los Angeles to Washington, D.C., a domestic trip, was taking a detour.
A scenic route.
A very scenic route. It went from California across the Pacific to China, and then boomeranged back to the U.S.
That seems inefficient.
It's incredibly inefficient, but it's highly effective if you want to copy that data.
How does that even happen? Is it a glitch?
It's an exploit of something called the Border Gateway Protocol, or BGP. Think of BGP as the Internet's postal service. Its job is to find the best route for data,
Okay.
but it's built on trust. So if a router in China says, hey, I have a fast path to Washington, the network just believes it.
So if you control the landing stations, the physical spots where cables come out of the ocean, you can basically trick the internet into sending traffic your way.
Exactly. You can hijack it or mirror it. You don't even need to break the encryption instantly. You just store it and crack it later. This is why Hillman focuses on the Peace Cable Project.
PEACE.
Pakistan East Africa Cable Express. It's a massive cable project connecting China, Pakistan, and Africa.
But bypassing the usual hubs.
Completely bypassing U.S. and European-controlled hubs. It's a strategy to create a China-centric network architecture. He compares it to Britain in the 19th century.
With the telegraph cables.
Exactly. Britain ruled the world because they controlled the cables. They knew that if you control the network, you control the message, especially in a crisis.
So China's building its own highways so it doesn't have to drive on ours.
Correct. And this brings us to the big question. Why is the world buying this? If we know about the espionage risks, if we know about the trap, why is the digital Silk Road so popular in the global south?
Hillman uses a framework for this that I thought was brilliant. Maslow's digital hierarchy.
It explains so much. Maslow's hierarchy of needs, says you need food and shelter before you worry about philosophy.
Right.
Well, in the digital world, a developing nation needs connectivity before it worries about cybersecurity.
So if I'm a leader in a developing nation and my people need 4G to bank, to communicate, to work.
And Huawei shows up and says, we'll build it for 30% less than the Western competitors. And, oh, by the way, the Chinese state banks will give you a low-interest loan to pay for it. You take the deal.
The risk of having no internet is scarier than the risk of Chinese spies.
Exactly. Affordability trumps privacy. Hillman notes that for years, the West's strategy has just been to wag our fingers. We say, don't buy Huawei, it's dangerous.
But we haven't been offering a check to pay for the alternative.
We offer warnings. They offer financing. And they're offering something else, too, the Smart City Package.
Or as the marketing brochures call it, safe cities.
Right. This is the export of surveillance tech. Facial recognition cameras, license plate readers, AI processing centers. It's sold as crime prevention. Catch the bad guys.
But Hillman argues it's actually a dictator starter kit.
It's digital authoritarianism in a box. If you are a fragile regime, this tech helps you track dissidents, monitor protests, and stay in power. Hillman found this tech in over 80 countries. It's normalizing the surveillance state globally.
And before we get too high and mighty about this being a them problem, the book points out that this happened right here in the U.S.
He did. Hillman visited Glasgow, Montana.
Rural America.
And he found Huawei equipment running the cell networks there.
Why?
Same reason as the African Union. It was cheap. For small, rural carriers trying to cover massive areas with few customers, Huawei was the only affordable option. They weren't trying to compromise national security, they were just trying to keep the lights on.
That really drives home the economic reality. It's not an ideological choice for most people, it's a budget choice.
Exactly. And now the U.S. government is spending billions to rip and replace that gear. But it just shows how effective China's strategy has been.
Okay, so we've covered the ground and the ocean. But the digital Silk Road has a vertical dimension, too. We need to look up.
To space, the final frontier of the network wars.
We're talking about Beidou.
Beidou. This is China's answer to GPS.
I think most of us treat GPS like a utility. It's like the air. It's just there. We forget it's actually a U.S. military asset.
Yeah. Owned and operated by the U.S. Air Force. And for decades, that gave the U.S. massive strategic leverage. China realized that in a conflict, say, over Taiwan, the U.S. could simply turn off GPS in that region.
Blind them.
Their missiles wouldn't find targets, their ships would be lost, so they built Beidou. And Hillman explains that with the completion of this satellite constellation, China has achieved digital autonomy.
They're immune to a GPS blackout.
Right. But it's not just about maps, is it? There's a deeper layer here regarding time.
Okay, what do you mean?
This is the part that really blew my mind. Satellites are basically just atomic clocks in the sky. Our modern world relies on these incredibly precise timing signals. Financial markets need to timestamp trades to the nanosecond, power grids, cell towers.
So if you control the satellites, you control the heartbeat of the global economy.
You do. And China is now exporting Beidou services to partners like Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, and Iran. They're pulling these countries out of the U.S. orbit, literally and figuratively, and onto a Chinese platform.
It feels like we're watching the world fracture. You have an American tech stack and a Chinese tech stack, and countries are having to pick a side.
Hillman calls this the Splinternet, a bifurcation of the global network. And this leads us to what might be the driest sounding but possibly most dangerous battleground in the book: standards.
The invisible war.
Hillman quotes a Chinese saying, "Third-rate companies make products. Second-rate companies design technology. First-rate companies set standards."
That is a power quote.
It is. Think about the width of railroad tracks. If you're the one who decides how wide the tracks are, everyone else has to build trains that fit your tracks.
So in the digital world, what are the tracks?
It's the protocols for 5G. It's the rules for how the Internet of Things devices talk to each other. For a long time, Western engineers sat in committee rooms in Geneva and wrote these rules. But now, China is flooding these committees.
They want to write the rule book for the next century.
Exactly. And if they set the standards, Western technology might become incompatible, or we might have to pay royalties to Chinese firms just to connect. It locks in geopolitical leverage for decades.
It turns a tech advantage into law.
Right. So when you step back and look at the whole picture, the cables, the smart cities, the satellites, the standards, Hillman argues this isn't random, this is strategic convergence.
Okay.
And the glue holding it all together is AI.
We've talked about AI in previous deep dives, but how does it fit into this infrastructure map?
Think about what AI needs. It
Yeah.
needs two things: massive amounts of data to learn from and massive bandwidth to move that data around.
So the cables and 5G provide the bandwidth.
And the safe city cameras and all the sensors provide the data. By wiring the world, China is essentially building a giant data collection engine.
They're harvesting the fuel for their AI.
Exactly. If you have video feeds from 80 countries, you can train your facial recognition algorithms to be more diverse, more accurate, and faster than anyone else's. Infrastructure leads to data dominance, and data dominance leads to AI dominance.
It makes the U.S. approach look a bit scattered by comparison.
Well, Hillman uses a gaming analogy that I think lands perfectly. He says the West has been playing Monopoly. We've been focused on commercial expansion, open markets, quarterly profits.
While China is playing Risk.
They're playing for territory and strategic control. They are willing to lose money on a project like the African Union HQ because it buys them a foothold on the map.
So where does this leave us?
Yeah.
The book ends with a scenario that is, well, it's terrifying. The worst possible day.
It's a scenario every listener should sit with. In the past, warfare meant mobilization. You saw the tanks gathering at the border. You had a warning.
But in a network war,
The conflict is already embedded in the system. The Trojan horse is already inside the walls.
it's the router in the basement.
It's the router. If an adversary controls the satellites that guide your grid, the cables that carry your banking data, and the software that runs your water treatment plant, they don't need to bomb you.
They just turn the lights off.
They flip a switch. They can induce paralysis without firing a single shot. Hillman's ultimate point is that we've integrated our adversary's technology into the very foundations of our society because it was cheap and convenient, and now we're realizing the cost.
That is a chilling thought. It really makes you rethink what it even means to be connected.
It should. The network wars aren't coming in the future. They're happening right now, in the background of everything we do.
Well, on that cheery note, thanks for listening to this deep dive into the digital Silk Road. It's a lot to process, but I think it's better to know how the plumbing works than to be surprised when the water stops flowing.
Absolutely. Stay curious.
And stay safe. We'll catch you on the next one.